Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Tony Curtis, and this is the SAMHSA Native Connections Grantee webinar. Strength-based approach. Along with the Native Connections team and our SAMHSA contracting officers, Maureen Madison and Jan Dunbar Cooper, we extend a warm welcome to all of you. At the end of this webinar, there will be a question and answer session. To allow time for presenters to answer any questions you may have for them next, allow me to introduce our team. In opening in a good way, Gary Newman.
Good morning from Klamath Falls, Oregon. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. We always open our webinars in a good way, and I would like to open today by sharing a poem that was written by one of my tribal members, Deborah Erling, Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe. We dance because years ago, your great-great-grandmothers and your great-great-grandfathers danced with the vision of you strong in their hearts. And though they are gone from us, they are here in our blood, here in our breath, lifting from us to the sky, to the Creator. We dance for our families. We dance for those who cannot dance. We dance for our babies and our elders. We dance in memory of all those who have left us and can no longer join us in the dance. We dance to give of ourselves for all that has been given to us. We dance for the coming year. We dance for the good days to come, not just the bad. We dance for the whole tribe. Each place in the dance circle represents a different time in the year to come. When the dancing becomes difficult, dance your way through the bad times. Let there be no bad thoughts in the dance circle. Each bad thought affects us all in the coming year. When your heart slows, when your feet become heavy and the dance floor, pump your arms, jump harder, jump yourself and your people through the bad times. Dance for your people, dance for all living things, dance for yourself. I'm a member of the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribe and a grantee technical assistant and a TA provider for the SAMHSA and the Native Connections grantees. It's an honor to be with you today. Bobby?
Yat a Ashihian slot Nisani Bushes Chin, Twa Heglini Desha Chain, Case Anishes the Needashanale. My name is Bobby Arthur, and I'm a GTA. I am Salt Clan, and I am born for the Tango people. And my maternal grandfathers are Water Flows Together, and my paternal grandfathers are the Hopi tribe, the Bear Clan, and that's who I am. Welcome, and I'm really happy to be here with everybody.
Thank you. During the webinar and at the end, we'd like you to share your experiences, and we'll have a time where we'll be asking you some questions, and we would like you to put in your responses in the chat box. We'll monitor and share them. If we don't get to all of them, they'll be recorded and shared following the presentation. Our objectives today, a strength-based approach starts by focusing on what's working. We'll explore resilience and a community's capacity to bounce back. You know, research shows that everyone has the capacity to be resilient if they have enough protective factors. Protective factors act as a buffer against life stressors. We'll examine those protective factors that communities have and focus on culture, tradition, family, and community. Next slide. I wanted to share a little bit about growing up, and in my recovery, I was at a training up in Alkali Lake in Canada. And they did an exercise where people talked about the kind of the bad things that they could see in you. And then we turned it around and did another exercise where we talked about the good things and the positive things and the strength-based things. And when we processed that, so many of us felt more comfortable hearing the bad things about ourselves than hearing the good things. And what we want to do with this webinar is maybe shift that a little bit so that we turn the narrative over to starting with a strength base, starting with strength, because we all have them. And maybe one day it'll be easier to hear the good things about ourselves. So a little bit about what is strength theory. In the face of the theory behind strength-based practice is that in the face of adversity, people reveal their inner strength and have the potential to utilize those strengths to become more resilient and resourceful. The strength perspective has a clear focus on human potential, strengths, abilities, and aspirations, according to the strengths model by Rapp and Gosha, 2006. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Bobby.
Thank you, Gary. Next slide. So today we're going to talk about a curriculum called Cultural Forward. Cultural Forward is a strength-based, culture-based type of curriculum. So we're going to go talk a little bit about the history of it, why it was developed, how it became, and how beneficial it can be moving forward in your programs. Go ahead, next slide. We're going to share a quick little video here from Deb Holland, our U.S. Secretary of Interior, who talked about, who gives a little talk about Cultural Forward.
I can't hear it.
No sound. We'll get the sound going. Thank you for being patient, everybody. We're trying to get our audio going here.
Hello, I'm Deb Holland, representative for New Mexico's 1st Congressional District and a member of Laguna Pueblo. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few words for the Culture Forward Guide. We know that suicide is an epidemic that affects Native youth at disproportionate rates, and our communities are losing bright young people with all the potential to make the world a better place. The work that Johns Hopkins Center for American Indian Health does to train professionals, research interventions, and empower communities to address suicide with culturally relevant resources can make a difference. I know our communities are resilient and
We're
that
not
we
seeing
can
the video.
overcome this obstacle.
Maybe a different screen.
No, Bobby, can you give me the video link in the chat real quick, please, so I can bring it up in YouTube? It's playing from the slide set, and I apologize. It's not coming through on our actual presentation.
Okay, hold on, please.
The link in the chat, please.
Thanks.
What we see, Tony, with the shared screen is your Zoom and your script, not the slide set.
Thank you. Let's try this again.
Thanks, Tony.
Hello, I'm Deb Holland, representative for New Mexico's 1st Congressional District and a member of Laguna Pueblo. Thank you for the...
Is it working?
See it.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, it is.
The opportunity to share a few words for the Culture Forward Guide. We know that suicide is an epidemic that affects Native youth at disproportionate rates, and our communities are losing bright young people with all the potential to make the world a better place. The work that Johns Hopkins Center for American Indian Health does to train professionals, research interventions, and empower communities to address suicide with culturally relevant resources can make a difference. I know our communities are resilient and that we can overcome this obstacle so that any young person, no matter where they live, knows that they are valued and that they have a future worth living for. I want to thank you all for the work you're doing to curb suicide among Native youth. I wish you all the best as you work to use cultural inspiration to develop creative and effective approaches to help our communities grapple with this issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. So as you gather from the little clip from Deb Holland, she had talked about the importance of culture and in dealing with our youth suicide. And when Cultural Forward had started, that was the focus of how it moved forward and why and how it was developed. Prior to the development of a Cultural Forward, there was a lot of information, literature, resources that were out in the community, in our communities, that were mostly focused on problem and deficit-based approaches in dealing with our American Indian, Alaska Native youth and suicide. And what Cultural Forward did was they wanted to take that, and they understood as they met with the communities, they started to understand that there was more of a unique type of approach that Native communities had to promote and to promote wellness and promote positive protective factors against suicide. And so they wanted to flip the vision of the dominant narrative and implement indigenous knowledges, which is our cultural factor, our cultural practices, and in moving forward with dealing with suicide in our Native youth. Okay, next screen. In doing that, they had developed and they went forward in our communities. It was a development with collaborative work with several Native communities across Indian country. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to get a really good understanding what was happening in Indian country in regards to suicide in our youth. And so they sat and really committed themselves to listening to having listening sessions with various tribal leaders and stakeholders in our native communities. Those stakeholders included people such as our Native youth leaders, our tribal leaders. We had people who were working at the grassroots level in regards to preventing suicide. They looked at people who were youth advocates, two-spirit leaders, elders, and of course, they got a lot of information from our traditional leaders or healers and practitioners, and also included the Native veterans in our Indian country. As they talked and had these listening sessions, they had listened to more than 60 Native stakeholders in a period of 6 months. And what they got from the listening sessions were 5 core themes, what eventually became the guiding principles and the chapters of Cultural Forward. So Cultural Forward has, like I had mentioned, there was 5 core themes. with the intent of making looking at cultural forward um, in the areas of tying in our traditional knowledge and cultural practices, they came across 5 themes, if you will, and starting from the center of of this this model right here, in the center they had the network of harness belongings. Then the outer edge was the lands and the elders. Then the next one, the blue section, are the traditional knowledge. The orange section is the native youth, and the outside, the green color, was the self-determination. Uh, the they looked at all of these themes and they wanted them to weave together. And they came across the design of this, and it looked like a basket. They wanted to refer to a basket, and how a lot of our native communities do have use baskets in ceremonies. They kind of they felt that the cultural forward and the themes were that, like as a basket, and that's how the model became what it was. Okay, next slide. So we have a little bit of background. When we're looking at suicide, there was not a whole lot of information that was published until 1967. Up until that point, there was in these discussions that they were having with Native communities, they found that there was no message, there was no talk about suicide in their youth. It wasn't until after 1967 when research started to happen and documentation started and had begun that they started to see that track the suicide rates of in our Native communities. Research also shows that we have a high risk of our youth between the ages of 15 to 34 who fall in the category of the high risk for suicide. They found that also in looking at and talking about suicide in our Native communities, not all communities were the same. There were some communities in our that were lower in numbers as far as suicide, and then there was others that were really high. So the walk away from that, it was to just really understand. It's so important to understand the impact of suicide in your particular communities, because it's not all the same. It's not a cookie cutter, so to say, across Indian country. It's all different and they're all unique depending on where you're at. So the first part of the inner core of the themes was our networks and harness belongings. They found that when there was a connectedness that to a caring adult, they were finding that was it fostered some healthy feelings and behaviors with our youth. Whenever there was a youth that maybe was possibly in some type of a distress, maybe depression, or had signs of suicide, those communities and those adults that had those caring individuals, that belonging, that network, were able to notice these youth who were having and struggling, and they were able to intervene and say, and be there and help them to get them connected to a resource in their community. So that's the importance of the harness, the networking and harnessing. It establishes the belonging. And then there's a connection to land, and the elders allow um, they help the youth to understand their connection to everything around them as in their lands. Elders were able to sit down with a lot of the youth to talk about the stories in their area, to talk about the history in their area, and these youth who were coming from that type of connection started to have that belonging, that sense of belonging of their indigenous lands, and it helped to strengthen their moods and their feelings and their behaviors. So there was a traditional healer who talked about, who had made this was just part of um, a statement that he had made. And he had mentioned that communication over food and water in the home was where prevention was planted, with words of encouragement and affection. Inside homes, there were, whether there was meal preparation, there was the morning rituals of prayers in the morning, all of those things were what they now look at and call home-based prevention. You know, when meals were prepped in the morning before our youth went to school, the youth would leave the home feeling like they were loved. They felt a sense of belonging. They felt a sense of worth. So when they left the home, there was no intent of self-harm. There was no intent of doing wrong or doing bad to themselves, because they know that they were armed with the love of their grandparents or their parents from home. So a lot of those simple things that were happening in the home early on were what they call the home-based prevention. So continuing the 5 core themes, we now get to the traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge holds the key to health and healing. For many of our Native communities, and many of us understand that our ceremonies and our medicines and our traditions provide us with the physical and mental and spiritual well-being of ourselves and our people. Historical traumas and mental health and substance abuse struggles and cultural loss, which can lead our youth to feeling displaced, and open the door for vulnerability. So helping our youth to stay focused on their culture and their knowledge and the ceremonies that are taught, help them to be stronger people, and help to allow them to overcome and help them to stay away from those high-risk situations of self-harm. Native youth also understand that they they come from a place of being sacred. A lot of our elders and our adults in our communities have always felt that our children were sacred to our communities, and the importance of our youth to carry on our stories and our traditions, our beliefs for the generations to come, was something that our elders and our people have always believed in. You know, coming from storytellers and storytelling, you know, those kind of significant stories get passed on to our youth. And so the theme for the Native youth to reclaim themselves and their well-being was part of the core themes of Cultural Forward. Self-determination. Tribal sovereignty can be a really big, a positive thing in when we address youth suicide in our communities. And also the tribal leaders have an important role in addressing suicide prevention. When we're talking about our leaders, they have the opportunity to demonstrate and to take hold of the communication and the dialogue to help and to help the prevention of suicide. They can carry messages and they can be more involved and get people involved in working towards providing a better wellness for our youth and when we're looking at suicide prevention. So tribal leaders do have an important role in suicide prevention.
Thank you, Bobby, for sharing those 5 core themes, and the curriculum for moving forward will be put in the chat box, or we can send it to you. Now we want to take a little movement break right now. We're going to do a little bit of Powwow Sweat.
In this segment, we will be learning movements that will be danced to a double beat song. These movements will be broken down step by step. Oh yeah, by the way, these movements can be done by women and men. Let's get it done. 4 basic steps, then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, up. Cross 4 times. Woo! Cross. Make sure you get your arm up. Woo! No more arm flab. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hop. Side. Up. Cross. 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 Turn. Change. Back. Side, 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 up. 2, 3, 4. Stop. Cross. 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 Hop. Spin. Change. 4. 8. Stop. Side. Hop. Up. Cross 4 times. Woo! Spin. Change. Back. Hop. Side. Side. Cross 4. Woo! Spin. Change. Back. 4, 5, 8. Side. Woo! Up. Cross. Back. 8, 4, 6, 8. Side 4 times. Hop up 4. Cross 4. Woo. Spin.
Thank you, Tony. How many of you got up and were moving around and got those juices flowing? Thanks for doing that. We're going to take a 10-minute break now, and we'd like you just to get up and stretch and move around just a little bit, and then we'll come back into our last portion of the webinar. So take a break and get something to drink, and we'll talk to you in 10 minutes. Science has caught up with what you all have always known. That is, our community knows. What our community knows, focusing on the negative, the deficit model doesn't and hasn't worked. Culture heals, and hope, or the focus on positive, mitigates the negative health consequences of adverse experiences. And June said all feedback to her ideas would be appreciated. What I would like us to do now is to get your input. You'll see on the screen, if you were to start a discussion about strength-based approaches, what would your first sentence or few sentences or comments be? Put those in the chat box and we'll share those. If you were to start a discussion about strength-based approaches, what would your first few comments or sentences be? And use the chat box. We want to begin to move the narrative. We are still here. Thank you, Marty. Just give yourself a moment and put in there what you would start out that conversation with. Linda Kinsley said resilience. Yeah. And if you're not able to type in the chat box, maybe unmute yourself and just share. You know, one of the homework assignments I often give at the end of a training when we're coming back together the next day is I ask people to spend 10 minutes that night just sharing positive things or positive comments to the people in their homes or if they're on the phone. And it's been interesting, the people's feedback. Julie said, we all succeed on leveraging our strengths, not on focusing on our shortcomings. Good start.
Yeah,
Thanks, Julie. Scott Barton, who has a special talent or quality that they want to share? The seeds for change are already within us and with us now. Let's find ways to grow them together. These are all wonderful, wonderful ways to start that conversation. Yeah, someone once said that with the boarding schools and all that, they tried to bury us, but they just planted a seed. Marie has a GPO call. She has to leave. It's a great presentation. Love the connection with culture, traditions, and protective factors. Thank you, Marie. Thanks for joining us. Any other comments or just things that you would begin that conversation with? Whether it's with a colleague or a family member. I know oftentimes elders will start their conversations in a strength-based way by telling a story. Let's move to the next slide. Now, here's your second question. What traditional cultural rituals, ceremonies, or activities happen in your community in January? We're going to just use the month of January. And Dave Braveheart said, we are the 7th generation our ancestors prayed for. So think about your community, think about your tribe. What cultural rituals or ceremonies or activities happen in your community in January? Just using the month of January. Put that down in the chat box. I know in my community, we have the jump dances. We had the naming ceremonies. Kimberly Hinman, we would sometimes have a sober New Year's Eve party. Yeah. Pipe offering for Sundance sponsor, round dance, New Year's Day, hand game, snow sake games. Normally our winter powwow, but with COVID, yeah, that has certainly impacted things. And
a lot of
COVID,
things.
pardon?
That has impacted a lot of our Native communities.
Oh,
COVID.
absolutely. Yeah, round dances. The poem I read in the beginning was attributed to our annual round dance. Valerie said, Eskimo dancing, celebrating the new year. Those are activities that happen in the communities in January. Are there other activities that might not be necessarily traditional? Maybe there are things around the church that happen in January, things around school that happen in January. Maybe the Boys and Girls Club does particular activities or events in January. In Northern Nevada, most of the New Year's events were canceled due to the COVID numbers going back up again. Reminder of water is life, teaching surrounding that because it's melting, are cooking the snow in our native language for January. Thank you, dear Lynn. Any other activities that happen in your community in January? That's a lot. Thank you all for listing those. Creating family maps that detail what we hope to manifest this year. Thank you, Christopher. And what I'd like to share is every one of those activities are protective factors. Every one of those activities are protective factors for our community. So if they're happening in your community, there are protective factors that you can tap into. An exercise I did and do in some of the communities I work with is when we're together, and this can be done virtually as well, using the Alaska Wellness Wholeness Circle with the 4 directions: environment, nature, animals, herbs, trees, and ocean in the 4 directions, and our sunshine and our night and water and plants and animals. What we did is we took 3 months, and we had 50 some people at this one activity in Shungyak, Alaska. We broke those 4 up into 4 separate tables, and they all had a piece of flip chart paper. There was a big round circle, and it was divided into 3 sections: January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And their assignment was, in their tables, in the 3 months they had, just write down the activities that happen in their communities. They had preparing in January for spring activities. They had church, they had bonfires, they had other celebrations in January. They did the same thing for February. They did the same thing for March. And I don't know if we can make this image any larger so it's easier to read. My old eyes, it's kind of small. But what they did is they spent quite a bit of time on those 3 months, and then they would move to the other table and they would write down and add to what that community had already done for those 3 months. Then they moved to the next and the next. And by the end of the activity, This is what they came up with. They came up with all of these events or activities, whether it was basketball, whether it was weaving, whether it was basket making, whether it was cutting wood for elders, whether it was ice fishing or whatever in the winter months. The elders that were sitting around the circle, at first, they stayed up against the walls, as elders often do. And when the conversation started happening, they got up and went over to the different tables. And they started saying, well, when I was young, I remember in January, we did this particular activity. And maybe only one family in the village is still doing that activity. What it did, it got the other people in the community saying, well, we'd like to learn that. Could you teach that to us? Could you teach us how to do that? And they went around and added what they knew of some of the things and rituals and ceremonies and activities that hadn't been taking place anymore for a variety of reasons. And the bottom line was, at the